Hi everyone. I thought I would come back and just basically add on to my last video, just talk about a few more things because I got a couple of comments that I just wanted to address in this video, just as a continuation. I wanted to just talk a little bit more about myself. I'm almost 21. I'm going to be 21 next month, and I stopped being vegetarian, I would say, around a little bit after I turned 19. And I would say that the biggest difference that I saw is from now to then is that I have more of a change in demeanor. I'm a lot calmer, more relaxed, more focused, which is a huge improvement from how I was when I was first starting to experience negative symptoms from the diet. So I would say that the first kinds of things that I noticed were what led me to start going to therapy because of my lack of focus in school and things like that. I could not concentrate. I was always somebody that was pretty good in school. And all of a sudden, like, I could not sit still. And at that time, they had first diagnosed me with ADHD as being somebody who just couldn't sit still and focus on one thing at a time. Attention deficit disorder, things like that. And I found that I had developed really beyond my general anxiety to more of a restlessness, and what they described as a physical anxiety, which they really wanted to get a hold of. And to combat that, I noticed that they would prescribe me more iron for these things. And at the time, I didn't really understand that or catch on to that, but I think it's really important to really research into your own health and to really listen to your own body, because I was feeling very fatigued, things like that. I already knew that I did struggle with anemia, and so iron was very much a lifeline for me when I needed it. And so I did take that regularly. I took vitamin D3 supplements, and I took B12, and this was all recommended to me by my doctor to make sure that I was keeping up with these things. Now, aside from that, I was also taking a multivitamin at the time. But aside from that, I would take these things regularly, and I found that I could possibly be having more of adverse side effects by taking those. I'm somebody who is more sensitive to taking certain kinds of medications and supplements and things like that. And I think that it's important to note that it's okay if, veganism or vegetarianism doesn't work for you, because, you don't know if you're going to be more sensitive to taking certain medications, and you might need to be followed really closely by a doctor to see your side effects of those things. Because yes, it may just seem like they're vitamins or things like that, but if you aren't taking a multivitamin, you could be lacking in other nutrients, or taking too much iron in that sense could offset the absorption of both copper and zinc, which could have other adverse side effects. And it's just really important that you understand that before even trying a diet like that, because it is a diet that needs to be heavily supplemented, if not only supplemented. So additionally, some of the things that I noticed with this iron issue that I had was that when I was hospitalized for my mental health issues, and I had this issue with this physical anxiety, besides all of the issues with bipolar disorder and the mania and things like that, which I also think it just exacerbated the mania that I was experiencing by having this physical and restless anxiety. And it manifested itself more in a way where I would have like shortness of breath, heart palpitations, fatigue, and it really got out of hand. And it wasn't, I was actually prescribed when I was in the hospital, I was prescribed ferrous sulfate. And I felt that if I didn't have ferrous sulfate that day, I could barely get up and walk around. I have this issue with this constant like shaking of my legs, and it wasn't that it was shaking on its own. It was that I couldn't sit still or do anything unless I was shaking them. Like that was my regular basis, and that's why I really bring into how my demeanor has changed since then, because I was constantly just like bopping around, lots of impulsive behaviors, things like that. And, it is really important that you get adequate nutrients and vitamins in your diet, because it really did end up basically derailing my like high school experience and high school career, basically, because by senior year, I had started freshman year, and by senior year, I could no longer make it to school. I had developed agoraphobia, which is a side effect of anxiety, I believe, where I could no longer leave the house. And another thing that I was experiencing was like hearing voices and things like that, which are all like disillusionment, things like that. Like those are all side effects of not having adequate nutrients. So even though I was being followed closely by a doctor, I was taking other medication. I eventually did have to take other medications for anxiety. I was prescribed Xanax for panic attacks, and then eventually that turned into being prescribed other medications for bipolar disorder and things like that, which I feel just going through that, I had to really go through a lot in terms of dealing with a personality change, and just there were other side effects. All of a sudden I was gaining an extreme amount of weight. It was mostly just water weight and stuff like that from the medications, and there were just some other things that I went through that I feel truly could have been easily avoided if I had had the proper nutrients to help me with this diet. Now I have to follow those things very closely. Certain things that I do eat and I do avoid now are all based on mental attributes. So how is this going to affect my daily life? How is this going to affect me? Will I feel okay if I eat this? Or will this certain food make me a little bit more depressed or a little bit more anxious, or things like that. I am somebody who is a coffee drinker, things like that. I really enjoy like stimulant kinds of things now, and I feel like it's because I do still have like an issue with like mania, so I have this kind of like addiction to mania that is often a side effect of it, where I'm constantly wanting to just be at 100% all the time, always completing things, always doing things. And that's okay if, those things help you, get through the day. But at a time, it was also worse because it was me doing excessive amounts of exercise and things like that, which somebody actually commented saying that they had poor fitness performance. And I feel that I also related to that, and it only made me want to work even harder in the gym to push my limits. And from that, I ended up getting like, I had like severe soreness. And something that I did experience when I wasn't vegetarian anymore was, okay, so I was diagnosed as a kid with having scoliosis, and something that I always had was severe like lower back pain because of that. And it got worse and worse to the point where I was kind of like hunched over throughout vegetarianism and things like that. My posture was really bad, and I felt like I could not deal with this back pain. Standing up and walking around consistently or standing up for long periods of time would really affect my back. And this I thought was just because of the scoliosis, but at the same time, it's really not normal for somebody who was, 18, 17, 16 years old. It was not normal. And I noticed that when I left the vegetarian diet, I was able to gain more strength in my back. And I think that that's something that also needs to be discussed as far as whether or not this diet really works for you, because I felt that I was having trouble gaining muscle, retaining fat, things like that. And I already had a lower metabolism for a long time. So me not being able to, really put weight on when I was eating a large amount of food was really useless in that sense. So another question I got was about the diet that I ate. So I was eating, like, I would say more of a standard lacto-avo diet, but I would only eat eggs like, once or twice a week. I would drink milk, but not excessively. It was mostly like with my eggs or something like that, or if something had eggs or milk in it, I didn't mind eating it. But I did try to make more vegan meals at home, using coconut oil, using chia seeds, all of those foods that you see people eating, more laxed foods. So when it came to like rice, beans, having some kind of greens on the side, having some kind of, meat substitute, whether it was like tofu or like whatever. Like I did eat some packaged food sometimes. Sometimes I would make whole food things. Sometimes I would make like falafel things myself, like stuff like that. And I had to eat like 4 or 5 large meals a day at some point. But what I found was, well, I've always had an issue with like lactose intolerance. What I found was that by now I drink more milk, kefir, I have yogurt and things like that. I read somewhere that it has to do with the processing of the milk, and really the best way to drink milk is if it's whole milk or raw milk, which is controversial, but I find that whole milk helps me a lot better. I don't feel any stomach pains or anything like that when I do have whole milk. And the same has gone for the rest of my family who has struggled with those things, because it kind of like runs in my family, the sensitivity to the lactose intolerance and things like that. Whole milk seems to be the better alternative for that. So I would say just try it out. Try to make sure you have whole milk and everything. Say you go to Starbucks, ask them for whole milk. I worked there before. So next, I would just say that another thing about the fatigue and feeling tired, I would have to sleep all the time. Now, it depends on what I eat. If I eat food that's, more, if I eat like red meats, things like that, organ meats, I don't feel the need to sleep excessively or anything like that. But there was a time where I was sleeping most of the day. And a lot of my story really ties into my issues with, mental illness and things like that. But I know that it's directly correlated now, especially considering that, my doctors at the time knew that it was directly correlated, whether or not they were communicating that with me. So that's pretty much all that I have to talk about. I could do a little video at some point, just showing what I eat in a day, or what I eat for health, making sure that I eat at least some kind of organ meats in a week or in a month. or something like that for how I cook things, drinking bone broth that I make myself, and even just eating foods that aren't always, that are grass fed and sometimes aren't grass fed. If you struggle with, just the cost of adding meat into your diet, because when I was vegetarian, food was extremely cheap. Now, there's other ways to supplement those things, but for a long period of time, I had to eat mostly meats to really just get back to a regular lifestyle, to what I have now, where I can now sometimes have rice and things like that. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching and have a great day.